Hello everyone, this is a COSE virtual interim meeting. It is an official IETF meeting and as such the note well applies. Please make sure you read it and understand it before you engage in any discussion or participate in other way in the meeting. This is our agenda for today. We are going to go through the document status after this administrative part. Then we have some time for CBOR certificates encoding and a few items that were discussed in the mailing list. Namely the FIDO WebAuthn redefined DSA algorithm and an Errata that was submitted and backed CBOR review. Okay, so some people seem to be having problems with the slides. The slides are also available in the meeting link if you want to do that. Okay, so is there any bashing of this agenda? Are there other items, or are some of the last three items already resolved?
Can someone that's already found it paste the minutes link in so that people can add themselves?
Yes, let me copy the minutes link. Okay, already done. So, okay, with that, the note was already presented. I'm sure you have noticed, but we have started the recording, so this meeting and the presence is recorded. And we have minutes that are taken on the following URL. Please make sure if you are commenting or something that if there are any action items from that, they are represented in the minutes. And we will also be looking at Jabber if there is any comments that needs to be relayed. And I think we can move to the status of the documents. I would say the maybe only thing that has changed a little bit more was there was a discussion on the countersign document. I'm not aware of significant changes in the status of the other documents listed here. I don't know if John or I don't know if Russ is here, if they want to summarize in a few words the changes that were discussed on the mailing list, but
on the countersign, or so, yeah, I think I made a PR that Russ has merged, and then I pointed out some things that needed some security considerations, and I'm happy with Russ' suggestion there. And then I think there was some editorial change in the text regarding the deterministic CBOR also. But I think everything seems to be moving on. I think we are, everything has probably been taken care of, except, yeah.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Thank you, John. And with that, I guess we can have the CBOR encoding draft. I guess you would be presenting some slides, or what is? Yeah, John.
Maybe on the last, the X509 draft would be good to get some progress on. I think there is a remaining conflict between Michael Richardson and Lawrence. I think there has been no discussion there since the last interim. Would be good to be able to handle that. And then I think there is need to decide on how to do with media formats and COSE content formats, what to register. Otherwise, I think there has been no comment from Ben. I guess we can assume that he's happy with my comments on his. Otherwise, I guess we are, yeah, it would be good to get some progress on that draft, I think.
Okay, so yes, for the content format, I don't know if, yes, I remember seeing Karsten commenting on that. So is that something that we as chairs need to kind of try to drive, or are there people that are having enough information and would like to suggest a way forward there? I know Karsten and John, you were having this discussion. Okay, let us note then in the minutes that the chairs need to look at the content format and have a discussion to have that figured out. Okay, so it seems that I should have received the slides. Yes, I see the slides for the certificate encoding. Let me download that and present. Okay, so with that, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I guess we can go to the next. So we have done quite a lot of commits to GitHub, but we have not submitted a new version. We will submit a 0.2 before the next IETF. So on GitHub, we have we have provided now CBOR encodings for all the remaining RFC 5280 extensions. Not all of them are implemented yet, and I don't have any example certificates for some of the extensions. Then we have added support for RPKI certificate. Russ was nice enough to send us some sample certificates that we worked on and implemented in the code, and also support for CBOR encoding of these of the extensions used in these RPKI certificates. And they typically send IP addresses and AS numbers, and these certificates can be very, very big. Then we have added support for GSMA EUICC PKI X509 profile. This is quite recent profile and updated quite frequently. We have gotten an example certificate based on the IEEE 802.1R or AR Dev ID from Michael. Thank you, Michael. We have not yet, I will try to do a CBOR encoding of this and make sure that everything works and update the draft based on that before the 02 version, but otherwise a bit later. We have added a first suggestion for a CRL format, which uses all the fields from the certificates. So it's very, very straightforward. There are some CRLs use some extensions on their own that have not been included yet, that will be used coming later. Then we have a new suggestion for CSR. Was some discussion on this on the list, and we'll have slides on both of these for discussion later. There's a new section on certificate issuance. One of the main ideas behind C509 is that it should be easy to implement in existing CAs. And we think that easy to implement for them means that there is a conversion between X509 there and C509. So you can implement this as a shim layer on the outer layers of the CA. Then there was a section on certificate profiling, which is very old and has not been updated. This has not been updated for a long while, so we removed this. There was the only discussion was a comment from Jim a very long time ago when he said that COSE should not do yet another certificate profile. We should focus on encoding and let other groups which are closer to a specific application do the profiling. Then there are a lot of updates to the extensions and tables. It's all these new extensions that have been added. There's also some extensions from RPKI, and I added some more information in the tables also. And then we have we got some additional. There was more requests for releasing this source code, so I finally made a good enough version to release, and that was released on the COSE working group GitHub. I know there are some minor errors in this, which I have fixed, so I will release an updated version in a couple of weeks before the next IETF, I hope. Any comments on that? Otherwise, we can go to the next slide. So this is the CRL format. Very much follows the certificate format. I don't think there is any new definitions. The revoked certificate structure is new, but otherwise it just use standard CBOR items or things that were already defined for the certificate, and the revoked certificate is just an array of already defined formats. And the idea with this is that the CA can take an existing CRL and re-encode it as C509 and then sign that. And then of course would very happy to get comments on this structure if there's something missing. I think there of course further things need consideration, like how do you reach this? Is this how do you signal the URI for this and so on? How do you difference between the two formats? Can go to next.
Can you just tell us which slide number, since most of us can't read them anymore?
Okay.
We are at slide number 3 right now.
By the way, we now can have interims on Meet Echo. Just a slight reminder.
So yeah, I can now I cannot read the slide myself.
Okay, let me try something.
I guess it's slide. It was not your fault. It's
much
just
better. Do it again, much better.
I think it's because the chairs now work at Google, right? Chairs now work at Google, and they don't have enough bandwidth anymore.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay, now that's readable.
Yeah, that's good. So that was slide 3. If there's no comments on the CRL structure, please, I think we would appreciate the reviews on the full draft of the next version. There's quite a lot of new. Thanks Ilari for the he's not here, but thanks to Ilari to the review of the last version. He caught some bugs and suggested improvements that was implemented in 01. Can take next slide 4. So this is the CSR format, very early. The first attempt. This also reuses all the fields from the certificate. And here I think we need to, this was, so the idea here is that it should be easy for the CA to implement and transform this to certification request info, which is the unsigned part of PKCS 10 CSR. We have discussed this with, so one of our co-authors is from a Swedish CA, Nexus. We have discussed this approach with him, of course, and he thinks it is, he thinks this is a good approach, even if he has not, they have not tried to implement it yet. So the idea with this was that we did not see any direct need for the device to generate the PKCS 10 CSR and then transform that to CBOR. So the idea here was that the device always do CBOR encoding and send that to the CA, and the CA transformed it to DER. And I think it makes sense to have maybe two different types, one where you suggest request a native format, and then one where you request a compressed DER certificate. And there was discussion on the mailing list regarding signature format, whether this was right and what the or whether it should be CVT format. Then we received one comment from Nexus was that we probably need the PKCS 10 attribute field. That will likely be added, but I think need more examples on how what it should be support before can write some CBOR for that, but it will probably be type value or type values maybe. I don't know. Is there any more slides? So here, so compression of change. So this is a issue 98, a very quite old discussion. It was discussion. We discussed this in an interim or ordinary meeting some time ago, that the current C509 only, it takes each certificate individually, and there's quite much to gain from looking at the whole chain. At that meeting, I presented some ideas for how you could refer to other certificates in the chain, but I also implemented that and provided numbers, but I think that complicates the C509 specification and encoding, so I don't think that should be done. On the other hand, I have implemented and tested Brotli, which is supported in TLS for change, and that provides that complements C509 very nicely and shrinks the message size of the whole chain. There was also suggestion discussion about using CBOR packed, but I think nobody has tried that out to see how much compression that provides. But I think now it's easy now to generate certificate change to test CBOR packed on. If we would like to support this, which I think we probably should, I think we need to have a way to signal compression additional compression in the COSE C509 structure. So I would suggest to introduce an integer there, where 0 is no compression, and 1, for example, is Brotli, and 2 is seaboard packed.
So seaboard packed is not actually re-encoding things. It's just a seaboard structure. So it's structurally different from encoding something to bytes, then sending it to a compression scheme, and then sending that byte string.
Yeah, it is. I think if seaboard packed is useful here, then we need to design this structure based to support that. This structure suggestion here is quite much based on uncompressed or Brotli, which I implemented.
So is there an easy way to get a number for C509 plus packed?
Yeah, this discussion now is, should we introduce this integer here, comp integer, and then that would be a IANA register for compression algorithms.
Well, before I have an opinion on that, I'd rather know whether seaboard packed already solves the problem.
See, I guess seaboard packed would be one alternative compression algorithm.
But it's not a compression algorithm. It just removes redundancy from the seaboard. So it works a little bit in a little bit different way.
Yeah, but you could take a C509 certificate chain and then you use Brotli, or you could, I assume you could use seaboard packed on that C509 certificate chain.
Yes, that's my point. So if you can send me a chain, I can run the seaboard packed on that, so I get a rough idea of what numbers we're talking about.
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
So, question for Karsten. So I think that's it. But first of all, that's excellent. If you could try it with seaboard pack, that would be really good to see. What I'm curious about is, do you see any problem with this construction that we have an additional? You say that depends on the outcome, but we know that from Brotli we can gain something. Wouldn't that be sufficient, or do you still need to think about it in the context of seaboard pack?
Brotli is useful if the constraint device never actually looks at these things. So if this is just about carrying around something that you don't understand anyway, then having a complex compression scheme like Brotli is not a problem. But if this is something that the constraint node actually has to look inside, then I'm not such a fan of running a complicated compression scheme.
Okay, thanks.
And I think that goes to use cases specifically. If it's device to cloud and the device just sends its certificate in this format and the cloud can take it apart with as much code as it likes, then I think that that's a particular use case. But if it's device to device, then the receiving device has got to presumably take something apart.
Right. So for some use cases, this may make sense, but not for all. And which would then, I think, would motivate to have this option. But yeah, we don't need to carry on the discussion now. Let's look at how the outcome.
So the alternative would be to send the whole thing through Brotli, which probably even gives you even a bit better compression. So that's why I'm wondering whether it's a good idea to have a point in there that transitions from an uncompressed to a compressed structure.
Sorry, I didn't understand the proposal.
So you always get the best result from compression if you put everything into the compressor, because then it can exploit all the redundancy that's in there. So my expectation would be, if you have something that benefits from compression, you would compress the whole thing. So you would compress the entire COSE structure that has a header parameter that uses a COSE C509. And not just use a compressed C509 inside an uncompressed COSE structure. So that's why I'm trying to understand the use case.
So you would like to have broadly on the whole COSE sign, or?
Well, I can do that today by just putting a content coding into my HTTP or whatever I use for transporting the thing. So
Again, yeah.
I'm just wondering whether having a transition point from an uncompressed outer shell to a compressed COSE C509 structure, putting the transition point right there, whether that's a good place.
Yeah.
And my hunch is maybe not.
If we do it here, I think my idea why including it here is that then it could also be used in the file format. And if you, for example, fetch it from a server. The plan right now in the document is to use this COSE C509 format in both as a header parameter in a file format and for as the content of a media type.
Yeah, but in HTTP we have the content coding part, the part that does the compression, alongside the media type and not in the media type. And there are good reasons to have this freely combinable, and that's why in COAP we have the content format construct, which combines a media type with coding scheme.
Yeah, you're right. There is no reason to have this for HTTP. There might be a reason to have it in the file format, or maybe not.
Yeah, let's look at a few more examples and use cases and try to understand whether this is actually what you would want to do.
Yeah, let's keep this open. And let's try to see if CBOR Pact provides some compression of this type of certificate chain. I agree that CBOR Pact makes more sense for constrained devices. Okay, next slide. So file format, we added a reference to IETF CBOR file magic, which Michael has written, but we have not done any more than that. I noticed that there were two different alternatives in this draft, and I was not sure which C509 certificates should use. And then I guess the question, if we standardize the CRL format also, I assume that might have a different than registered tag and so on. Do anybody have any clear view right now how to do this. This is not a hurry. This can be done at a later stage.
Can you refresh me whether C509 is a CBOR sequence or a single CBOR data item?
It's a data item. The idea is to use this COSE C509 structure.
Okay.
So that I think there is no reason to design a file format for a single certificate. I think it's better to define the file format for a sequence of certificates, so a chain or a bag, which may or may not use different tags. But
so the bag would be a CBOR sequence, or
no, that would also be item.
okay.
So maybe then it's simple. So I think it will always be an item. The idea is to use exactly same. So maybe that is all then tag wrapped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. If there are no other questions or comments, I guess we can see who are the people that could present the next items and discuss those. So. Are there people in the meeting that know exactly the issue for the WebAuthn? Otherwise, I can provide my understanding for the issue.
Sure, this is Mike. I can speak as an individual, but one who's in the FIDO and WebAuthn working groups. The FIDO group decided to use CBOR as its encoding for the messages and wanted to have representations of signature algorithms, and decided to just, since there were already CBOR algorithm numbers registered in COSE, they thought that let's just use that. What wasn't realized until too late is that Jim Shad made different choices for COSE than were made in Jose. That in Jose, every algorithm identifier corresponded to a fully specified algorithm, including the curve, where in COSE, Jim decided to have the algorithm identifiers be polymorphic and be conditional on other inputs from the key, including for elliptic curve signatures, the curve. WebAuthn and FIDO thought that they could use a single number from the COSE registry, and they were done. And indeed, that worked for quite some time until one of the implementers said, well, okay, how do you use ED448 rather than ED25519? And we realized, oops, COSE did not have different identifiers for those things, which I think is a deficiency, but it's a ship that sailed. So what FIDO and WebAuthn had to do, if they weren't going to like introduce additional numbers, was to say, okay, in the FIDO context, the EDDSA number means EDDSA with this curve, and likewise, you know, when I then, at the request of the FIDO people, created the algorithm identifiers in COSE and JOSE for SecP 256K1 and signing with it, we corrected that problem and made it unambiguous so that you have a different algorithm number for it. But that's the backstory. I don't think it's fixable. If you're using these numbers in FIDO context, they are imbued with additional meaning than are used in JOSE data structures. I'll also note for the record that FIDO doesn't use, and WebAuthn doesn't use COSE signatures. It only uses the algorithm identifiers. I hope that helps.
John here. I just looked at the Jose Ayan. I don't think your description, what you said, is true for ECDSA, where COSE and Jose do different things, and COSE is more following X509. But for EDDSA, it looks like Jose also only have a single algorithm registered, which is EDDSA. So I assume it's the same thing as COSE.
Yeah, and from a Jose perspective, that's something that the working group didn't catch it and should have fixed it, but that's also now a ship that sailed, that even in Jose, I believe EDDSA is polymorphic, which is a shame. Why did this topic come up here? What's the question at hand?
I guess the question is whether there is something that COSE could do or should do to help resolve this issue. I think in the mailing list, someone was suggesting adding additional values, which
that would be the fix, is to add additional algorithm values so that the algorithm values become unambiguous and deprecate those that are ambiguous.
Doesn't sound like a terrible thing to me.
No, I think that would be a step forward. And we could also publish a policy for the designated experts in a draft doing that, that henceforward algorithm identifiers will be self-contained descriptions of all parameters needed for the algorithm.
That seems like the opposite of what was seemed to be the conclusion on the mailing list when this was discussed a couple of months ago, when Russ Housley expressed that ES256K registration was the mistake.
No, that was intentional because it's unambiguous. I must admit, I didn't see that on the mailing list. If someone wants to put the topic into the chat, I could look at it offline, but as an individual, not as a chair.
So this was discussed in when this LVIG draft from René was discussed and the registrations there. I'm not sure what's the right thing to do from the beginning, but I don't know. It would be good if the same for all the curves. Changing it now seems complex and maybe not the right thing to do.
So basically, what we want is consistency, and it seems the COSE way of doing things is to parameterize the algorithm identifier with a curve. So if we are aligning anything, then I would expect us to align in that direction and not in the other direction.
I disagree that the FIDO case demonstrates why that's a problem.
Well, the problem is that somebody thought that an algorithm identifier might imply the curve, and it doesn't.
Again, we may disagree, but I think that's the problem.
It's the inconsistency between COSE and Jose that got people in the trouble.
And I did in my COSE reviews tell Jim, please don't do that. And he decided to do something different than Jose in this case, for reasons that are still mysterious to me, and we will for now.
So why is COSE doing the same thing?
Sorry, I think John has said, and I think I agree with John, that on this point, there is no difference between Jose and COSE.
Right.
So if I looked at the JSON, there is the analogous. You have the web key elliptic curve register, and you have that's where you actually define the curves.
There is a difference for ECDSA, not for EDSA.
Yes.
And I think both Jose and COSE is inconsistent at this point.
Yeah, which is a shame, but we as reviewers failed ourselves. We didn't catch it in time.
I disagree. I think this was intentional. If you read Hilary's mail thread response to the input from this person Anders Rundgren implementing WebAuthn, I think that, following his line of argument, I think that I agree with that. That's basically it is intentional, and there are reasons why you need to do certain checks, and that's sort of highlighted by these choices you make along the way. So it's I think it's by design, and I think it's good.
Okay, so
Can
maybe
somebody put the subject of the mail thread and which list it appeared on into the chat, please?
Yes, it's the COSE mail list.
it's COSE. I will send it to you, Mike, if you don't find it. But I guess let's move on to the next topic, and yes, let's discuss in the mailing list. Thank you, Karsten, for sharing it in the chat. Okay. So I don't know if anyone has looked into the Errata. So there was a new Errata submitted, and I guess we need to decide what is the best way to process it. I'm actually not familiar with the process. Is that something that should be just discussed on the mailing list, or is it something the chairs or the AD does? How does that work?
Well, I think it would be good for the working group to actually have an opinion here. And if, as it seems to me, there is a bug in 8152 bis as well, we should make sure that this is fixed before it's published.
Yes, I agree.
So did people read Hilary's proposal? I just put the pointer in the chat.
Yes, so Matt, will it be okay for you to look at this from the perspective of the BIS documents and share your findings afterwards? And of course, everyone, please also read it, and I remember reading it when Hillary responded, but I will need to read it again.
I'll take a look at this.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we are at our last topic of the day.
Yeah, that's a weird title you gave it, because that's just the title of the email where the question originally came up. But the question really is how are hash algorithms referenced in the COSE algorithm registry? And I found it surprising that the hash algorithms draft says that hash algorithms do not have any COSE capability. So the COSE capability set should be empty, while the registry for all of the hash algorithms says this has the KTY capability, key type capability. And I'm just trying to understand what happened there. So to me, it seems having the key type capability on a hash algorithm isn't right. So I think the registry is wrong. But I also would like to understand how those values went into the registry. So I'm sorry I didn't make slides with all that.
Well, I guess we will have to look and probably discuss that with Ayana, if I understood correctly.
Yeah, if you go to the link I sent and then search for RFC IETF COSE hash algorithms 09, then you'll find things like SHA-256. And this has in its capabilities column the value KTY. And if you actually click on the link to COSE hash algorithms from there and search for the word capabilities, then you find that the capabilities in all the tables are empty.
I'm supposed to start with the IANA registry, and then I'm supposed to go to,
In the registry, you have a link to the draft.
yes.
And if you click on the draft and search for the word capabilities, then you find it in the table headings.
Hmm.
Well, let me just,
Section 8, capabilities.
so for instance, in table 1, you have SHA-1. And well, SHA-1 is an interesting
Table.
example.
Table 1. Okay.
Table 1
In the document.
in the COSE hash
8152
algorithms.
8152 bis algs.
No, it's in a separate hash algs document
In the hash algos, sorry.
because we retrofitted this.
So it sounds to me that we will have to check how those values were uploaded in the registry. Okay, thank you.
So I have no idea whether you can see what I'm sharing, but
Yes.
there you see the capabilities.
And none of them have any capabilities. So the question is, why are we bothering? Or
no, why does the registry say they have?
oh, I see. And we don't.
And the documents say they don't. And I think it would be not a good thing to say that hash algorithms have a key type capability unless I don't understand what a key type capability is. Hash value is not a key.
Yes. Okay. Let me note that we will have to check that. I guess it would make sense for the chairs to check it. Okay. Yes, I guess that's all on that topic. So we are actually more or less right on time, unless there is anything other very important to discuss now. Let's discuss things on the mailing list.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
Thanks.
see you soon. Have a good evening.